Imagine holding the key to saving millions of lives, only to have the very people you saved destroy you. This is the story of a mind so brilliant, it bent the course of human history, breaking an unbreakable code and laying the foundation for the world we live in today. But the ultimate reward for his unmatched genius was a betrayal so profound, it remains a dark stain on the conscience of a nation. Long before he was a hero of the Second World War, Alan Turing was a boy who simply did not fit into the world around him. Born in London in 1912, he possessed a mind that operated on an entirely different frequency. While other children played games, Alan was trying to decode the universe. He taught himself to read in 3 weeks and solved complex mathematical equations before he even understood basic calculus. But this extraordinary intellect came with a heavy price. At school, he was relentlessly bullied, isolated by his own genius, and fundamentally misunderstood by his teachers who valued classical conformity over raw, unstructured brilliance. There was only one person who truly understood him, a boy named Christopher Morcom. Christopher was Alan's intellectual equal, his only friend, and his first great love. Together, they spent their days discussing astronomy, mathematics, and the intricate mysteries of the physical world. For the first time in his life, Alan felt human. He felt seen. But tragedy struck with a brutal suddenness. In 1930, Christopher suddenly died of bovine tuberculosis. Alan was completely shattered. The grief threatened to consume him entirely. But instead of breaking him, it forged a lifelong obsession. Desperate to understand where Christopher had gone, Alan began to study the human mind. He became consumed by a single, revolutionary question. If a human mind is just a complex series of electrical and chemical signals, could it be replicated? Could a machine be built to think, to reason, and perhaps to hold the essence of a human soul? He did not know it then, but this heartbroken pursuit of his lost friend would eventually become the foundation of modern computing. Alan Turing was about to change the world. The year is 1939. Europe is falling into darkness. The Nazi war machine is tearing through the continent with terrifying speed and precision. But their greatest weapon was not their tanks, nor their planes. It was a machine that looked deceptively like a heavy wooden typewriter. It was called the Enigma. The Enigma machine was a marvel of cryptographic engineering. Every time a German operator pressed a key, a series of electrical rotors spun, scrambling the letter into something entirely different. But the true nightmare of Enigma was the plugboard on the front, which added an incomprehensible layer of complexity. The machine could generate 159 quintillion different possible combinations. To put that into perspective, if you had 10,000 men checking one combination every single second, 24 hours a day, it would take them millions of years to check them all. And there was a catch. The Germans changed the settings every single day at midnight. For the British military, it was an impossible nightmare. Every midnight, the clock reset. Every day, the British intelligence officers at the secret facility known as Bletchley Park started from scratch, staring at a mountain of intercepted gibberish while British ships were being hunted down and slaughtered in the Atlantic by German U-boats. The Allies were flying blind. The war was being lost in the dark. The military's approach was to use linguists and crossword experts to try to guess the messages. But when Alan Turing arrived at Bletchley Park, he saw the fatal flaw in their logic. You cannot defeat a machine with human minds. The math is simply too massive. The time is simply too short. Turing realized that there was only one way to defeat the Enigma. He had to build a better machine. Turing retreated into his own world, working in isolation within Hut 8. He was eccentric, often chaining his coffee mug to a radiator so it would not be stolen, and riding his bicycle with a gas mask on to combat his severe allergies. The military brass despised him. They saw him as arrogant, insubordinate, and a complete waste of military funding. They wanted him fired. They wanted him gone. But Turing was building a monster, a massive, ticking, whirring, electromechanical beast that he called the bomb. The bomb was designed not to guess the Enigma settings, but to logically eliminate the incorrect ones at lightning speed. It was a machine designed to think. When the massive machine was finally switched on, the tension in the room was agonizing. The rotors spun, clicking with a deafening rhythm. Hours passed. Then, the machine stopped. The dials locked into place. Turing took the settings generated by his machine, walked over to a captured Enigma typewriter, and typed in the intercepted German gibberish. Out came perfect, readable, terrifyingly clear German. They had done it. They had broken the unbreakable code. But the victory brought a horrific new reality. Turing and his team suddenly had access to all of Germany's secrets. They knew where the U-boats were, and they knew where the bombings would happen. But they could not save everyone. If they acted on every decoded message, the Germans would instantly realize Enigma was broken and change the entire system, plunging the Allies back into darkness. Alan Turing, a mathematician, was suddenly forced to play God. He had to help calculate the grim statistics of war, which ships could be saved, and which had to be sacrificed to keep the secret. It was a heavy, soul-crushing burden. But the strategy worked. Because of Turing's machine, the Allies gained the upper hand. Historians estimate that breaking the Enigma shortened the Second World War by at least 2 to 4 years, saving a staggering 14 million lives. Alan Turing had saved the world. When the guns finally fell silent in 1945, there were no parades for Alan Turing. There were no medals pinned to his chest in public. Because of the extreme secrecy of Bletchley Park, Turing and his colleagues were sworn to absolute silence. All the machines they built were dismantled and all the records were burned. He could not tell his friends, his family, or his colleagues what he had done. He simply faded back into civilian life as an obscure mathematics professor. But his mind was already living decades in the future. The war had proven his theory. Machines could be built to process logic. Now, he wanted to go further. He began designing the automatic computing engine, one of the first designs for a stored program computer, laying the architectural blueprints for the digital age. In 1950, he published a paper that would echo through eternity. It began with a simple, provocative sentence. Can machines think? In this paper, he introduced the imitation game, which the world now knows as the Turing test. He proposed that if a human interrogator could not tell the difference between a machine's answers and a human's answers, the machine must be considered intelligent. He was talking about artificial intelligence decades before the term even existed. He was looking at a world of slow, clunky mainframes and seeing a future of neural networks, smartphones, and artificial minds. He was at the absolute peak of his intellectual powers, and then his own country destroyed him. In January of 1952, Alan Turing's home in Manchester was burglarized. It was a minor incident, just a few missing items. Turing, always a man of pure logic and extreme honesty, reported the crime to the police. During the investigation, the detectives asked Turing how he knew the burglar. Turing, incapable of lying and seeing no logical reason to hide who he was, admitted that the burglar was an acquaintance of a young man he was intimately involved with. The burglary investigation was instantly dropped. The police had a new target. In 1952, homosexuality was a criminal offense in the United Kingdom, despite the fact that this man had secretly saved the very nation that was now prosecuting him. The government showed no mercy. Alan Turing was arrested and charged with gross indecency. The trial was a swift and brutal humiliation. His wartime service was still highly classified. meaning no one in the courtroom knew they were sitting in judgment of the man who defeated Nazi Germany. He was found guilty. The judge offered him a horrific ultimatum. He could either serve a lengthy sentence in a brutal prison, which would mean the end of his research, or he could avoid prison by submitting to a year of chemical castration. Desperate to continue his work, to keep his mind active, Turing chose the chemical treatment. The government forced him to take high doses of synthetic estrogen. The physical and psychological effects were devastating. His athletic body, which used to run marathons at Olympic qualifying speeds, became sluggish and altered. His mind, once sharp and infinitely focused, became clouded with severe depression. Worse still, his security clearance was instantly revoked. In the eyes of the British government, his sexuality made him a security risk, vulnerable to blackmail by Soviet spies. He was banned from entering the government facilities he had once helped lead. The father of modern computing was locked out of his own future, isolated, monitored by the police, and stripped of his dignity. The exact events of June 7, 1954, remain shrouded in mystery and tragedy. Alan Turing's housekeeper arrived at his home in the morning to find him dead in his bed. He was just 41 years old. Beside his bed lay a half-eaten apple. The coroner determined the cause of death to be cyanide poisoning, and it was quickly ruled a suicide. Friends noted Turing's lifelong fascination with the Disney film Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, specifically the scene where the wicked queen dips the apple into the sleeping death. It seemed like a poetic, tragic end for a man who had been poisoned by the society he saved. But the mystery deepens the closer you look. No suicide note was ever found. Turing had laid out his clothes for the next morning and had left a list of tasks he intended to complete on his desk. His mother vehemently denied he took his own life, insisting that he was careless with his chemistry experiments in his spare room and had accidentally ingested the cyanide on his fingers while eating the apple. And then there are the darker theories. As the Cold War escalated, the British Secret Service was terrified of homosexuals being targeted by Soviet agents. Turing knew more state secrets than almost anyone alive. He knew the absolute limits of British cryptography. Some historians and conspiracy theorists have asked the chilling question: was Alan Turing pushed to his death? Did the very intelligent services he helped build decide he was too dangerous to be left alive? The half-eaten apple was never actually tested for cyanide. The police simply assumed it was the delivery method and threw it away. The full truth of what happened in that room died with him, leaving behind a profound sense of injustice. For decades, the world did not know the name Alan Turing. His monumental achievements were locked away in classified vaults, and his tragic death was swept under the rug of history. But truth, much like a mathematical equation, inevitably balances itself. In the 1970s, the veil of secrecy over Bletchley Park was finally lifted. The world learned that the Second World War was not just won by soldiers on beaches, but by a quiet, eccentric mathematician in a wooden hut. His theories on computing, once viewed as science fiction, became the very reality of the modern world. The laptop you use, the phone in your pocket, and the algorithms that shape our global society. They are all built on the foundation of Alan Turing's mind. In 2009, after a massive public campaign, the British Prime Minister issued a formal, unequivocal apology for the appalling way Turing was treated. And in 2013, Queen Elizabeth II granted him a rare, posthumous royal pardon. Today, his face graces the 50-pound note, a symbol of national pride rather than national shame. But the pardon came far too late for the man who loved Christopher Morecambe, who broke the Enigma, and who dreamed of thinking machines. Alan Turing's story is a triumph of the human intellect, but it is also a devastating warning. It forces us to ask how many brilliant minds have been crushed by the ignorance and prejudice of their own time. He gave the world the future, and in return, the world gave him an apple laced with poison. We owe him our freedom. We owe him our technology. But most importantly, we owe him the absolute truth of his story. Thank you for watching. If you were moved by the tragic and incredible story of Alan Turing, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it so that his legacy is never forgotten again. Let me know in the comments below. What do you think really happened on that fateful night in 1954?